Good morning, everyone. What I'd like to do is try and finish off, at least just concluding comments on the first chunk of the sugya, which is conveniently split more or less to the bottom of the Amud, and then turn on to the next Amud. It's one sugya, obviously, but there's a sort of a natural breaking point conveniently at the bottom of the Amud. On Kuf Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, we began speaking at the bottom. We began speaking about the issue of Gezerah Yom Tov Atu Shabbos and the Bakas to be Yom Tov Dovish Shemlacht and Hetahu and so on. And we also spoke briefly about the sugya in Beitzah that introduces the concept of Lo Nitnu Eitzim Elah Hasaka, and how these two sugyas go together. I'm not going to go through all the details of that, which we touched upon last time, and for those who had the time, you could have seen a Rishonim on it. Not easy Rishonim, but basically the summary was that the Ramban and others see the two sugyas as in conflict, and the Rosh, in the name of Rabbeinu Tam, see the two sugyas as connected. That because Lo Nitnu Eitzim Elah Hasaka, that's why that the meaning of Lo Nitnu Eitzim Elah Hasaka is explaining itself why on Shabbos it's Muktza and on Yom Tov it's also because of the Gezerah of Shabbos Atu Yom Tov. What I just want to briefly touch upon is, which serves as a fitting hakdama to the next topic, is what would be, just to try and probe a little bit more deeply as to what is the status of this bakas, this block of wood. So again, we have a block of wood. The block of wood has a use, which is it can be used on Yom Tov. However, unlike other useful things, it's not a keli, nor is it food, and therefore we don't say that since it's omeid for one thing, it's omeid for all use. So again, a utensil, the definition of a utensil is that it's my slave. It's omeid for any uses I can put it to. And a non-Muktza utensil, a spoon, is not Muktza in the least, other than maybe in Nechemia's Gezerah at one stage. It's not Muktza in the least. Why? Because it's useful on Shabbos in a mutter way. I can use it to eat my cereal. And therefore I can use it on Shabbos for any use, because it's omeid for any use. Even what we call a Muktza keli, like a hammer, which is Muktza because its primary use is to hammer nails in, and that's not allowed, nonetheless is omeid for other uses I can put it to, like using it as a paperweight or cracking coconuts, and therefore it's mutter l'sorech gufay. That's the concept of kli shemlacht al being mutter l'sorech gufay. The block of wood, says the Gemara, is not a keli. It's eitzim. It's eitzim avonim. It's just a lump of wood. It's not something that's been molded or formed by human need into an implement, into a tool of human need. We haven't made it into our slave. It's just raw material. It's just a block of wood. It hasn't been formed into something. And therefore, even though it has a use on Yom Tov, because it can be used for Hasaka, it isn't omeid for any other use, and therefore is Muktza with respect to everything else. Now, that's what's clear from the Gemara. Is this block of wood mutter tiltal? Am I allowed to move it around? It's clear in the Gemara I can't use it for anything else. Am I allowed to move it around on Yom Tov or not? In other words, leaving aside the Gezerah and other things, in principle, is it allowed to be moved around on Yom Tov? So the argument which is made by some poskim is that yes, it can be moved on Yom Tov, because since it's omeid l'hasaka, since it has a Yom Tov use, it clearly isn't Muktza. When the Gemara says that you can't use it for any other use, that's because it's not omeid for any other use. It's not a keli. Even though it has one use, that use doesn't drag along with it all possible potential uses. That's a unique svara in kelim. The whole lomdus of a keli is that since it has a use, it's become my tool, it's become my slave, and therefore it's omeid for any other uses. This isn't a keli, so it's not omeid for any other uses. However, for tiltal, it's not Muktza. If you ask the question, is it Muktza? Can I move it around and do things with it on Yom, just move it around on Yom Tov? The answer is why not? Any other use is contradicting its use as lahasaka. However, to move around, I should be able to move it around. This is the view of some poskim. The Mishnah Berurah takes this view head on and disagrees with it. And the Shiur is in some Tovkuf base. I didn't print. I don't think I printed the Mishnah Berurah in the source sheet. And he says that you're not allowed to move it for any other purpose because it is Muktza. It includes it in Muktza. In Sif Cotton Chaf or Chaf Aleph. I should have printed it on the previous source sheet. I will send it out. In other words, what he's saying is, since it's not a kli, even though it has a use, it is muchan for hasaka, for burning, but with respect to other uses, it's equivalent to muktzah machmas gufay. It's like any other stone or block of wood, which is muktzah machmas gufay, which you're not allowed to move around. With respect to hasaka, to burning, or to being metaltelit, to burn, with respect to that, it's muchan. But with respect to anything else, any other use or any other tiltal, whether michama l'tzel or LeTsorech gufay, or just because I want to move it around, with respect to that, it's osa and muktza. By the way, this may be relevant halacha l'maisa even in a case where I dedicate a stone for use, for a particular use, but it doesn't become a keli because it's not a keli that's used for everything. But I take a stone, I pick up a stone from my garden, and I put it on my desk as a paperweight. Or the more classic example in Halacha was when they used to put a stone on top of a chavis. So based on the logic of the Mishnah Berurah, many poskim say that stone remains Muktza. In other words, I can move it, I can use it as a paperweight, I can move it for its use as a paperweight, but with respect to everything else, it lacks hachana and therefore it can't be moved. Let me just try and zoom back and just try and explain a fuller picture of this. Very quickly into learning Hilchos Muktza, we realized that the vocabulary of is something Muktza, is it not Muktza, is insufficient. It's too unnuanced. And we need to understand whether something is Muktza with respect to certain functions or not Muktza with respect to other functions in certain ways. Okay, so on one extreme, we have a Kli Melachot Leheta, which is Muchan for any use and Omed for any use, whether for its primary use or for secondary use. Who disagrees with that and says, no, it's only Omed for its primary use, but not for secondary uses? That's from Nechemia. That's from Nechemia's Chiddush, but we don't pass it like that, right? Then you have a Kli Melachot Le'issa. Even though it's a Kli Melachot Le'issa, what we call Muktza, in truth, it's still a Keli. And by dint of being a Keli, it's Muchan for any Mutter uses. Who disagrees with that again? From Nechemia. But we paskin that since it's a Keli, it's Muchan for any uses. Then we go all the way to the opposite extreme, which are stones out in your garden. You go out to your garden on Shabbos. You can't pick up a stone and move it because it's not muchan at all. It's muktzah machmas gufo, and you can't even sit on it because you can't use muktzah. Not only can you not move muktzah, you can't use muktzah, you can't eat muktzah, etc. You can't be mishtamish with muktzah. So that's the opposite extreme, a stone. Now we're arriving at stones which are not as extreme as sitting there in the garden with no uses, but a stone that has one particular use. It's a stone that I've decided to use to block my chovis, my barrel, or as a paperweight, or more closer to home, our topic of a block of wood. Says the Gemara, this block of wood is still not a keli. So therefore, it's not by default omed for any other ishtamshus. Since that's so, says the Mishnah Berurah, I can't be metaltal it either. I can use it for its use, I can be metaltal it for its use, but no other tiltal is mutter. So included in this prohibition is all ishtamshus and all tiltal, because fundamentally it's still muktzah machmas gufay. It's muktzah machmas gufay means that the body of it is fundamentally muktzah. It's not just that it's a kli melachot issa, which is a kli that happens to be melachot issa. It's muktzah machmas gufay. There's a chiddush that I can be making it for one particular use, and with respect to that particular use, it's not muktzah. But with respect to anything outside that, whether tiltal or use, it remains muktzah. It's still a stone. It's still just raw material. Raw material on Shabbos is not muchan, and therefore is muktzah. That's the chiddush that emerges from our sugya. And again, I want to point out that this is a chiddush lahalacha. So we've now entered. This is not really spoken about. If you look in the sort of kitzas forum that speak about categories of muktzah, they don't really speak about this category of muktzah. But the Mishnah Berurah brings it, and I in hindsight I regret that I didn't put it on the source sheet. I will add it and then put it out on the WhatsApp group. Mishnah Berurah brings there's a category of muktzah which is muktzah machmas gufo, like eitzim avonim, that's prepared only made for one particular use, like this bakas, that it's only made for hasaka, and nonetheless remains muktzah with respect to all other uses.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah, I'll take you in a minute, Max, but someone's just asking you a live question.
Could
Yeah.
you move the big cut in order to be sewn with the day on?
No,
So
no, that's exactly the point. Yeah.
Even to use it for the purpose that you're allowed to use it for, you couldn't even be moving it in order to be sewn with the thing on.
Correct. That is correct. Yes.
Quite
Yes, it's quite strict. Yes, yes. And I think it's the Chazon Ish. I need to double check. Who says that you can't? Did the Rishonim say this far already? Did I print it here?
Not moving it.
Just give me 1 second. Who says that the reason you can't move it to lean a door on it is because that contradicts the you can say middle, I'm going to leave this on hold because you can say middle position, that you can move it, but not anything that contradicts its use. So you can't move it to lean a door on it, which is a middle position, but I'll put that on hold. Yeah, sorry, Asha.
How would you be allowed to move it for purposes of its newly designated use?
You can move it for hasaka, but you can't move it for any non-hasaka use.
You require hachana, that you will work before Aragon you were going to use it for hasaka, or can you just pick it up?
No. This is what we see in the language of the Gemara and Beitzah. Nit not eitzim, Elah hasaka. Eitzim were given for hasaka. Who gave them for that? Rashi elsewhere used on the language of nit not eitzim says nit not adam harishan. That means with the arrival of humanity and fire, it becomes definitional. Yes, it becomes that's what it fundamentally is made for. Yeah.
Sorry.
Is it? 1 second, Mike. Sorry. Is that the same for other fuels? The answer to that question is it depends how. There's a general debate in halacha. That's just I'm going to come back to your question. I want to take halachas and sukkahs, and then I'll talk about philosophy of halacha in answer to your question. Sorry, Max. Yeah.
No, I was just clarifying. Surely LeTsorech Makomo would be all right because that's not handling stum. It's a different thing, isn't it?
No, the Chazon Ish on this Mishnah Berurah adds in even LeTsorech Makomo would be also. Because that's the point. The whole allowance of LeTsorech Makomo is because it's ultimately a kli hishtamshus. It's only made to serve, and part of the way that Kalim serve us is by moving out of the way, shuffling out of the way when I need them to do so. But this is not a KD, and therefore it's even also LeTsorech Makomo. Yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Just an answer to your question, which is, would this apply to other fuels or not? Just a general comment. We've visited this idea before. There's a general question in halacha, and there may be one answer across all halachas, or it may vary between sugya and sugya. To what degree halacha, when it gives definitions, is dealing with something fundamental, existential, ontological, woven into the fabric of creation, and to what degree it's just about functionality and human needs. And when we learn brachas, for example, we find that, certain things have unique status. Bread made of the Chameshes Aminim is lechem. Wine, grapes are made to be made into wine and therefore into juice. And when I squeeze an orange, it's just Zeya Ba'alma. The orange juice is just a trivial liquid that comes out of the fruit. But with grapes, we don't say that. We say this. In all those cases, we asked, what is it just that it happens to reflect how society was in Bavel or in Eretz Yisrael 2,500 years ago, and therefore Chazal fixed the Hilchos Brachos based on that, in which case we could begin speculating maybe it would change if societal changes, or maybe it wouldn't change because the halacha was fixed and the Gezerah doesn't change, interesting imagine, or is it telling us something fundamental about what a grape is, what Chameshes Minim are, and what they're fundamentally given for, what their role is in the world. We saw, for example, the Gemara is Dorish, the uniqueness of grapes from Psukim, in which case it implies this is existential, it's fundamental, it's not just about human societal need. So here too, when we say nit na'etzim elul hasaka, you can begin pondering, does that apply nowadays, where none of us use wood for fire? If you have a lump of wood in the garden and your heating breaks on Yom Tov, can you put that wood into your disused fireplace, which you haven't used for 40 years, and heat it or not? That's one way around. And the other way around, what about other fuels? Is this something existential, fundamental about the role of eitzim in the Bria? Or is this just a reflection of human needs and human society, and therefore we're determined? Lashon Rashi always rings in my ears, because Rashi says, Lo nitzon ala adam arishan. It sounds almost as fundamental, like the designated role of wood in the Bria is for eitzim, for hasaka, even though we use wood for all sorts of other things. We use wood to make furniture. But nonetheless, the role for which it's given. But that's the sort of meta. It depends on sort of halachic philosophy how you understand that. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to bring out from the previous sugya. Okay. I just Rabbi Kiva is the one who I'm going to leave it. There's extra layers of complication, but I'm not going to go into this. Okay, so is this reasonably clear? Yeah. Okay. What I'd like to do now is turn over the Omid and Chuf Chaftalid Omid base, where the Gemara says that the Gemara suggests that only Beis Shammai would hold of this Gzeira between Yom Tov and Shabbos, etc. And the Gemara then links that in to Beis Shammai's view that Hotzah on Yom Tov is only LeTsorech, but not Shelo LeTsorech, not Shelo LeTsorech Eichel Nefesh. And the Gemara then asks, how can you compare Hotzah to Tiltul? In other words, it's true that Beis Shammai has a much more restricted view of Meleches Hotzah on Yom Tov. So we carry casually on Yom Tov, right? Why do we carry casually on Yom Tov? Because surely carrying it outside an Eruv is a melacha. The answer is, but it's Muktza l'Sorech Eichel Nefesh. Okay, it's Muktza l'Sorech Eichel Nefesh, but what about other carrying? Who says you can carry because you want to take your lulav to shul, or because you want to carry a child around? The answer is Mitoich. Since the melacha is Muktza l'Sorech Eichel Nefesh, it's Muktza for any tzorech. Beis Shammai disagrees with that Mitoich. Beis Shammai has a much more narrow allowance of melachas hotzah. Says the Gemara, similarly, he would have a more narrow allowance of the melacha of tiltul of Muktza. Asks the Gemara, what's hotzah got to do with tiltul? Answers the Gemara in wonder. Tiltul gufin av mishum hotzah. Who isn't tiltul because of hotzah? So the Gemara seems to assume as blatantly obvious that tiltul is because of hotzah. So this is my numbering is all wrong on the sheet, so I apologize. This is the Gemara. Now, all I really want to do is just go through the Machlokas Rishonim as to, is this Gemara the last word on the subject or not? The Gemara seems to. Does the Gemara say that Muktza is because of Eitzah? Is that what the Gemara says? It seems to say that. Seems to be a conclusion. Okay. If we held Muktza was for other reasons, I'm just saying mathematical logic. What could you say about this Gemara? Where could we go from in this Gemara?
Other reasons as well.
Right. Does the Gemara say it's the only reason for Muktza? Maybe this is a reason for Muktza. So it could be there's other reasons for Muktza. It could be there's several reasons for Muktza, and maybe there'd be enough Geminas between the reasons. All the Gemara needs to do in order to answer its question, the Gemara has said a piece of logic. It said that in the same way as Beis Shammai is more restrictive about the allowance of Hotzah, similarly he's more restrictive about the allowance of Muktza. Ask the Gemara, what's Hotzah got to do with Muktza? Answer the Gemara, Hotzah, it could be answering Hotzah is a reason for Muktza. And therefore, if you're more machmir in Hotzah, you will be more machmir in Muktza. It doesn't say Hotzah is the only reason for Muktza. So that's the first point of logic in the Gemara. The second point of logic in the Gemara is that the Gemara may be saying this in Beis Shammai, not in Beis Hillel. In other words, maybe the Gemara is saying, according to Beis Shammai, surely the reason for Muktza is Hotzah, but according to Beis Hillel, the Gemara doesn't say anything, in which case this whole Gemara is Shaloi Halacha. Mathematically, those are the two ways we would need to question about the Gemara. So just to summarize, on face value, we have a very important Maramokum, in which it tells us that Hotzah and Muktza are linked. However, we need to hear the Gemara properly. It tells us that in Beis Shammai, technically it may be that in Beis Hillel not, though why shouldn't it be in Beis Hillel? Where do we see that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are linked to the reasons for Hotzah? The second limitation is that all you see in the Gemara is that one of the reasons for Hotzah, for Tiltul, for Muktza is Hotzah. You don't see in the Gemara that this is the reason for Muktza, or the only reason, or even the main reason for the halacha of Muktza. Those are the two reasons. The reason to worry about this is because, and again, I know we haven't learned this Gemara, but there is a whole Gemara at the beginning of Beitzah in which the Gemara seems to talk about Hachana as being at the heart of Muktza. And in truth, all the halachas we've learned till now throughout the Masechet seems to be to do with Hachana. So if the reason for Muktza is because of Hotzah, then why should Hachana make a difference? Are you with me? Why should it make a difference whether it's Mukhan or not? In fact, who did we see who said that the inability to move Canaan is to do with an avoidance of Melacha? Where did we see such a svara before? Very ancient in Jewish history. That was Nechemia, right? Nechemia at least was consistent. Nechemia said basically you don't move anything on Shabbos. Why? Because any activity with Canaan can lead to Melachas. So Nechemia avoided Hachana really being the critical criteria. Nechemia just said don't move anything on Shabbos other than real bare necessities, because the more you're engaged with implements and utensils, the more likely you are to come and do Melachas, not just Eitzah, but all sorts of Melachas. So step back from any engagement with implements. That's what Nechemia said in Kufchaf Gimel Amud Beis. We don't paskin like the full extent of Nechemia was unraveled. Nonetheless, in this reason of the Gemara, the basis of the prohibition of Muktza is to do with one malach, at least the malach of Hotzah. Why should that be dependent on Hachana? So you could say two answers. Either this is evidence that there's more going on in Muktza besides just Hotzah, or for some reason which we could ponder over, Chazal didn't want to restrict everything because of Hotzah, but they wanted us to be more thoughtful about how we're using Kelim, and therefore they said Kelim which are Muchan you can use, but any Kelim which isn't Muchan don't use, because any use of Kelim can drift towards Hotzah. So in the second version, fundamentally the reason for Muktza could have been like Nechemia, not to move any Kelim at all. But they at least the final unraveling of Nechemia meant that this gezerah is much more limited, and they only made the gezerah on non-muchan kelim. There's not really anything to do with hachana. That's again how this could go. So just to summarize again, we have a halachic fact that Muktza seems to be dependent on hachana. There is a Gemara in Beitzah which does tie this into a pasuk of a Heichinu. The pasuk says that you should prepare before Shabbos. You could hear a logic of Muktza to do with Hachana actually, because if Shabbos is about resting and not doing things, you can understand that even though it's not a Malacha Muktza, it's not one of the Lamates Malachas, nonetheless, part of the stepping back on Shabbos is not to prepare unprepared things, not to use unprepared things, and it's completely a Hachana din. That's how you could have learned Hilchos Muktza. And the Halacha L'maisa Muktza is definitely to do with Hachana. The alternative model of Muktza is that really Muktza is to do with avoidance of melachas, but they didn't want to restrict everything, so they said non-muchan things don't use, but muchan things you can use. And our Gemara would appear to be a rye for that, because our Gemara links it in Hotzah, and we have in a sense, to some degree, a little bit of a clash of sugyas between the Gemara and Beitzah, which seems to make it more about Hachana, our Gemara which seems to make it about Hotzah, and as we saw, possible resolutions is it's both. There's several reasons for Muktza, and another possible resolution is our Gemara is a narrow Gemara in the context of Beis Shammai, and it never meant to say a general principle. All I want to do in the remaining minutes really of Shiur is just to run through very briefly the Mara Mekomis outside, just summarize what they're saying, and then I'll leave it to you to go through inside. There will not be a Shiur, unfortunately, for good reasons. On Tuesday we have a chasna of my chatanim making a wedding, but unfortunately from the point of view of this learning, unfortunately there won't be a Shiur then. I'm sorry it's been a little disrupted. Just to give you the Mara Mekomis, there's no good reason why the Tosfos has a 2 other than I cut and pasted it from last week's Mara Mekomis. So I apologize for that, nor is there a good reason why the Asmech has a 6. But just to go through the Mara Mekomis very briefly, what I wanted to bring out from Tosfos and have a look at your notes from the previous Shiurim is Tosfos says that Muktza is mutter on Shabbos because of Ochel Nefesh. Sorry, on Yom Tov because of Ochel Nefesh. Sorry, yes. In the same way as Ochel Nefesh is mutter on, as Melach is mutter on Yom Tov, so too Muktza is mutter on Yom Tov. Is that obvious or not? It may depend on how intertwined Muktza is to Melacha. If the whole basis for the Issa of Muktza is to do with Melacha, then I can understand that in the same way as Melacha is mutter, so too Ochel Nefesh is mutter. Particularly if Muktza is because of Hotzah. Well, obviously, if Hotzah is mutter on Yom Tov, the Halacha according to Beis Hillel, even not for Ochel Nefesh, then obviously Muktza should be mutter. Okay, so that's one ha'ora around Muktza. The Rambam in the 2 halachas gives several reasons for Muktza. We could answer the Rambam by saying that he thought our Gemara isn't giving the only reason for Muktza. There's other reasons. The problem is he doesn't mention our Gemara. He doesn't mention Hotzah as one of the reasons. So have a look at the Rambam inside. There's the Hasaga of the Ravid on the Rambam. The Ravid wrote critical notes on the Rambam in which he points this out. He points out this problem. So have a look at the Ravid. Then there's the LeTsorech, which we saw previously, in which the LeTsorech links Muktza to Hotzah, and he explains the halacha that we looked at in previous Shiurim, that why once you have Muktza in your hand, you don't have to put it down. And he compares it to Akira and Halacha. etc. So he compares it explicitly to Otzar. So I reminded you of that last night. And then I printed two sources in which the Marsha and the Chasam Sofer both argue that there are two types of Muktza. And we mentioned this in previous Shiurim, but not in depth. We mentioned that Muktza is a prohibition of tiltul, of moving, of taking, and Muktza is also a prohibition of hishtamshus, of shimush, of using or eating or burning or anything like that. And in different ways, the Marsha and the Chasam Sofer both argue that these two Muktzas, even though they intertwine, are not identical and have their own halachas. And one way of understanding these differences is that tiltul is because of melacha or hotzar, whereas shimush is because of hachana. That's basically what these two sources say. For example, Tosfos, who says that Muktza is mutter because of on Yom Tov with Oshel Nefesh, may only be referring to one category of Muktza and another category of Muktza, and have a look inside. So that's why that's what I want to do with the sources. So on Tuesday, those who haven't managed to do so have a learn through these sources, and then in Muktza Hashem on Sunday we'll try and bring this all together. So stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you.